Hello,
I
everyone.
think I'm Kim.
It's your friend, your boy,
I'm
Jet Black, the
actually
one and only, here with.
a guy who just took off his pants.
And today, we're going to be doing episode 3 of Two Guys Talking, a podcast where Ryan and I just talk on the phone about really just whatever we want. Ryan, do you mind if I start off by talking about DC's messed up continuity? Like DC Comics
I
continuity?
mean, if you didn't, wouldn't everyone be disappointed in you?
Maybe. I don't know if people care about DC Comics continuity. So I was watching a Comic Drake video earlier today. And in the video, he was talking about the famous issue of The Flash, where the Flash meets Jay Garrick for the first time. Jay Garrick being the original Flash. And it's established that Jay Garrick exists on another Earth, and that there's like a multiverse in the DC. Well, it's weird to say there's a multiverse in the DC universe. It establishes that there is a DC multiverse with that comic. Now, technically, there's an older Wonder Woman comic that establishes that there's like an alternate universe that's like the invisible universe. No one ever talks about that one though. And I don't know enough information about that one to go into any additional detail. But I will say, Comic Drake brought up a really cool thing about Silver Age Flash's origin. So the original Flash is Jay Garrick, and then they introduced the Silver Age Flash, who's Barry Allen. And the thing that's interesting about Jay Garrick is that he would hang out with like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. He was like a major hero in the DC Comics universe. But when Barry Allen showed up, he established that Jay Garrick wasn't a real person. He was like a comic book character. Barry Allen Flash was inspired to become the Flash by reading Jay Garrick comics. But until they had that comic where Barry Allen met Jay Garrick and they established that Jay Garrick lived on another Earth, there was no explanation for why Jay Garrick was suddenly fictional. Do you get what I'm saying with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially what's being said is that when the Flash was like reading Jay Garrick comics, that was our first hint that Jay Garrick didn't exist on the same Earth. But before we even knew there were multiple Earths, from a reader's perspective, that doesn't make any sense. Because you go, wait a minute, if Jay Garrick is like a comic book character within the comics, then how is it that he's hung out with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman? Like there wasn't like a reboot or something that happened. There wasn't like a huge like crisis event. It's just suddenly they're saying Jay Garrick just never was a real person. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on like that period in time? Like before they established that there's like another Earth where it's just like Jay Garrick suddenly is fictional.
Um, I don't know if I have any opinions on that period of time.
Well, think about it like this, Ryan. Imagine you're watching like Avatar The Last Airbender. Suddenly there's an episode, dude shows up and he's like, I'm gonna become what's the alternate persona that Zuko had?
Why are you using
Why am I using Avatar The Last Airbender? To like create an illustration of a similar concept, but in like a different media to show how like off-putting it is. Like it doesn't have to be like Avatar The Last Airbender. I just know that's something that you're familiar with. But what's the name of the blue devil thing that Zuko,
the blue spirit?
the blue spirit? Yeah, so Zuko's blue spirit persona. Imagine if there was suddenly an episode of Avatar The Last Airbender where some guy shows up that you've never seen before and he says, I've read fictional tales of Zuko as the blue spirit. So he establishes that like Zuko's not real and like he never was real. And then he goes, I'm inspired by these stories to become the new blue spirit. And like he's hanging out with like Aang,
How is it new?
Tara, and Sokka and stuff, who we all saw hang out with Zuko before. And no one acknowledges that Zuko was a real person ever.
Yeah, I get it. I don't
Okay.
know what this analogy serves.
Well, the point of the like analogy or whatever is to set up the idea that like I had never thought about how, like what a weird plot change that was at the time, and I never considered them introducing like another Earth and trying to fix continuity. I always thought that was them just like adding to the lore to say, oh, there's like a multiverse. I didn't think they were like fixing a like hole in the plot. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Okay. So, one thing that's interesting about this is that there's no clearly drawn line between when the books are taking place on the Earth where Jay Garrick lives and when the books are taking place on the Earth where Jay Garrick doesn't exist. Because it's like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman never stopped printing. Like they kept making new adventures with those characters.
Yeah.
And in their older adventures, they hung out with Jay Garrick, the Flash. And eventually, they stopped publishing Flash books. So Jay Garrick disappeared, but we were still following the same Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman who hung out with Jay Garrick until a certain point in history where technically we're not following the same Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman anymore. We're now following the Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman that like have never met Jay Garrick because Jay Garrick's not a real person and he's been like a comic the whole time. But there isn't like a super clear delineation for you to know when that happens. You know what I mean?
Uh,
Right. Like
yeah.
it's like a weirder continuity change than like the crisis stuff that they do later where they like are destroying the multiverse or like recreating the multiverse because it's them saying that like the other stuff you read was like fake, like it never happened, it's a comic book, like before they established that there are two worlds. And I think that's an interesting way to set up like a continuity change, but it's also
So
something
there's a
that's been
picture on Facebook of of Kaylee with cactus, cacti.
cacti if it's more than one cactus.
Like she's holding small plants, and it looks like there are other. There's at least maybe one other cactus.
Thank you.
So probably cacti.
Yeah, sounds like cacti. I appreciate the update. Thank you for joining us for Kaylee Cactus Corner. Ryan always has the latest Kaylee Cactus updates. Um, Marvel has done a similar thing before with changing continuity by saying that it was fake. Dozer was telling me about this. In the Ultimate Marvel universe, there's a series called Ultimate Iron Man. Up, and we disconnected from Ryan. And now Ryan's calling back. Redial. What? So is it because he's calling me that the in another call? He's in the call with me trying to call me. Stop fucking calling me. Redial. Damn it! What is he doing? Yeah, I get it. He got it all fucked up. So now it's showing Facebook, which I didn't want it to do. Got me.
Wait, what happened?
So because I tried to like recall you in the same window or whatever,
Yeah.
but because you were calling me, it was like he's in another call. So then I had to close the window to answer the new call. But then when the window closed, OBS is like, well, now I need to capture whatever the active window is because you closed the other one. So then it's like just showing Facebook messages. It just like shows Messenger.
Uh,
And it's like, that's not what yeah, like that's not the point.
gotten exposed. All of the cacti.
Okay. So now I'm gonna full screen you and we're back to where we were before. Well, no, we're not, because now your window is blocking everything. So I need to drag it down. Here we go. And now we're back. So Ultimate Marvel Universe had Ultimate Iron Man. And my friend Dozer was telling me that Ultimate Iron Man was later retconned, and they said it didn't actually happen in universe. Instead, it was also, let me just close Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, because then you'll see pictures of this cat.
So they established that Ultimate Iron Man actually never happened. It was like a TV show in universe, but it wasn't originally
I
portrayed.
too am a TV show in our universe.
Is it this show that's not on TV? Like, what show are you in this universe? Ryan's like, today's the troll day. I'm gonna troll on the podcast. Fair. Okay. So back to like the Jay Garrick thing. Um, so essentially what DC does in order to reconcile having like a fictional world continuity is to say, well, the stories that you read before, connection lost. Come on. Ryan, don't fuck me on this. Let me redial you on the window, please. Connection lost. Okay. In another damn it, Ryan. Don't call me. Let me call you. Don't do this shit again. In another call. Hello? Did we connect this time? Come on, we got this. Hello? Unreach. What the fuck was that? Why did it set it up as if it connected? Hello? Yo, Ryan. Episode 3 Revenge of the Trolls. Ryan. 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 Ryan, why you trolling so hard? We died. Hello.
Is it working?
Yeah, it's working now. Let me
I don't.
call you whenever it like disconnects. I think that'll be
Okay.
easier due to like the weird OBS shenanigans. But welcome back, Ryan.
Say nothing but a herb.
Tell me why. Making those Backstreet Boys references, I see, Ryan. So going back to the like DC multiverse thing. So it seems like the reason why they created the multiverse in the first place was to fix continuity. And that was like their first attempt at trying to fix continuity and say that everything happened. You know?
Yeah.
Like that's like the beginning of this never ending train of them trying to say that everything happened. And to be honest, I don't hate that method. I just feel like they should be more clear about it. Because as of Doomsday Clock, they've established that technically they've always been doing that. Because Doomsday Clock says the New 52, that's like its own universe. And technically the New 52 is still going on, but just in its own universe. And they're like DC Rebirth, it's its own universe. It's not the same universe as the New 52. They're like all the New 52 stories happen on the New 52 universe, but that's not where our stories are told. And they're like pre-crisis universe, that's its own thing. Post-crisis universe, that's its own thing. But they weren't establishing that at the time. I think if they keep doing the thing where they just go, now all our stories take place on Earth number whatever, that might just be the easiest way to have your cake and eat it too. You don't need someone to like go back in time and undo Crisis on Infinite Earths, or go back in time and make it where like the Justice Society never existed in order to change continuity, or go back in time and cause the New 52 to occur due to Flashpoint or something. Like all DC ever has to do is just say, New World, who this? And if you're wondering why it's different, it's just because it's a new Earth. Why
I mean, like,
did it? Oh, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
They could have been doing that this whole time.
Exactly. And now they're like trying to retroactively say, we have been doing that the whole time. We just weren't telling you. But then they're also still trying to do all these other things to like explain themselves and make it all matter, even though they already are making it where it all matters. Which is pretty consistent with what we've said before. But what are your thoughts on that?
So like, why are they trying to like go back in time and make things happen and not happen if you can just be like, and this main point of view of the readers is happening on this other universe now?
Um,
Like, what is the point of crisis events except, well, I suppose, like if they're on like some like multiverse level, like Perpetua stuff, because then they'd be like, well, then they'd all be threatened. But doesn't that mean something like, I mean, I guess because is there even a, so the thing with the Jim Lee where it's like it's all canon now, it all matters. I'm like, so what was the canon before that? Like, if you're like, they're retroactively saying all of these different like crisis event sort of like new status quo changes were really just like switching perspectives to seeing events on like a different universe, then was any like what was the point, like what was can like what is the point of like having a canon?
so I
Like
think
I'm not, what?
I think the like question of what is the point of having a canon and what was the status quo before is a good question. I think before they had an infinite multiverse, but they weren't saying what all the universes were. Like they were just like, if we want to tell a story, we can just say the story happened somewhere in the infinite multiverse. But Jim Lee is now saying, well, all those worlds, they just are like the other medias that you see. Like I that's like essentially what was established with that announcement. It's not like the announcement is saying we have an infinite multiverse because we've already had an infinite multiverse since Convergence. It's him just explaining what's in it is what we didn't know before. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then for your continuity question, like what's the point of having all these crisis events if we can just change perspective? I 100% agree that crisis events like overcomplicate things since we already have had a seamless transition before to just saying, well, it's weird to say seamless. They could have explained when we switched. And so far, they've never done that. But like even now, they never just say it's another Earth now. But I think that is what they should do for the foreseeable future. We don't need a crisis. We just need them to say, okay, so the last like Earth we were looking at is called Earth this. And we can tell stories involving Earth this again in the future. But right now we're on like Earth new. And from now on, it's just going to be on Earth new until we switch again. Like that just should be what they should have been doing the whole time, and now what they're saying they have been doing. Um, but you brought up something really important earlier, Ryan, that I don't want to like ignore or pass by. You mentioned that whenever a big crisis happens that affects the multiverse, that technically it should affect like all the stuff that's ever happened and all the different like stories. Um, and that leads me into like a similar topic, talking about this like everything's canon, everything exists in the multiverse thing. Um, if that's the case, let's say you do what Jim Lee says, where he's like, your favorite Superman is the main Superman, they're the canon Superman, they're the one that matters. Like you can just focus on the Superman that you like. Let's say that your favorite Superman is Superman from like the Legion of Superheroes cartoon or something, or from like the DCAU, like the Superman that appears in Justice League and Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series. You could look at everything that has him in it, and you still technically don't have the full story about his universe because every like crisis event in the comics and every like movie where the multiverse is threatened and every like animated movie or TV show where the multiverse is threatened still like indirectly will involve like that world even if that world doesn't appear because it's established that they're all in the same multiverse. So it seems like even if you were like, I'm a super fan and I know everything there is about like the DCAU, then
Like Watchtower database kind of guy.
right, Watchtower Database being a YouTube channel that's all about like stuff that happens in the DCAU. It's like if you don't know about every like multiverse event, then you're technically not like fully aware of like everything that happened with your universe. Because those events could straight up be like that world has been like destroyed before, or that world has like come back from destruction before, or like there was a time travel event and that world was technically combined with another world, and then there was like another event where it's like, well, now that world's back. Like, you essentially have canon that affects entire universes, but where those universes aren't directly present in the story. And you'll have stuff like the Infinite Crisis comic book. I don't think I've ever talked to you about this before, but there's like a Infinite Crisis MOBA that DC Comics had that was like League of Legends but DC Comics, and you played as different versions of characters from across the multiverse. That comic book is really important. It used to not be important because it was just like a tie-in story for like a video game. But as soon as Jim Lee's like, well, that video game's canon and it takes place in the same multiverse as everything else, then it's like, oh, so you're saying when like Superman from Superman Red Sun shows up in Infinite Crisis, that's just the Superman from Superman Red Sun. That's just like the dude that we saw in the other story. Like it's like, oh, that matters now. Like that whole comic is based on multiverse shenanigans and people like crossing
Doesn't that
there.
mean if all of the different like movies and like media are also like some version somewhere, doesn't that mean every time they have like an animated movie adapting one of the comic book stories, you're essentially having like two versions of the same thing everywhere? Like if you have like the Dark Knight Returns, right?
Right.
And then you have like the Dark Knight Returns animated movie. It's like, well, now we have two universes that are just the Dark Knight Returns, but like pretty much
Yes.
the same thing, just one's animated.
Right. That's like exactly the case. Like the
Yeah.
Watchmen movie is its own universe, and the Watchmen graphic novel is its own universe, and the Watchmen TV show is its own universe. You know, like they keep
And then the Doomsday Clock is somewhere. Like, is he the guy from the comic, or is he the guy from one of those other movie or shows or something?
that
How would you even delineate that?
they normally are pretty direct with stuff like that. Like if it was supposed to be Dr. Manhattan from the HBO show or something, they would have just said it was him from the HBO show. So the Dr. Manhattan that
Okay.
shows up in Doomsday Clock is the Dr. Manhattan from the original Watchmen graphic novel, specifically.
Okay.
Um, but you're right. We do have a ton of redundant universes. Um, but I think that gets crazier when you talk about like what is it called? Crisis on Two Earths, like the animated movie or whatever.
Yes.
That movie is super important because Owlman isn't just destroying a bunch of like unnamed Earths that we've like never seen. He's destroying stuff like Smallville could be at risk, or like Adventures of Superboy, or like Filmation Superman, or like Christopher Reeve's Super. Like the worlds that are in the balance are all the other things that you care about. So even if you're like, I don't care about Crisis on Two Earths, It's just kind of like a standalone
Yeah, but
movie. It's like it
to
still
what
kind of
degree
matters
can
though.
those things be destroyed, right? Like, if Jim Lee's like everything's canon and everything has like its own universe, like, like the Fleischer Superman,
Hmm.
how can the Fleischer Superman universe be destroyed in a comic book? Like if if like okay, so Jim Lee says that, right?
Right.
And then Perpetua, like in 2021, like in the comic book or something, rolls in and destroys the universe that the Fleischer Superman show is on, right?
Right.
And then, like in 2022, somebody, like just a random person, watches the Fleischer cartoon and then watches the Jim Lee video, and they're like, oh, so I guess there's a whole universe where that is. But they hadn't heard about the perpetual, like, to what degree is like all of these like threatening the multiverse if like the reader could always just be like, well, that exists in its like its own universe.
So it matters
Right?
because of crossovers where they do dip their toes in. For example, when Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, not in the comics but on the CW Crisis goes out of its way to be like, no, it's everything. Like the Fleischer Superman thing, they get like erased during Crisis. Like that's just a real example of like a thing that gets
Really?
yeah.
Like, because I was like you would have to essentially bring up that continuity, like content movie thing to kill it. Like, because like from the point of view of like the Fleischer Superman, when does it die?
Well, all the Fleischer Superman stories that you've already seen
Yeah,
clearly have happened. But
yeah.
DC is saying not only have those occurred on a universe, that universe is like a persistent thing where like stories are still
Right,
happening
okay,
and it's
yeah,
still
but like
expanding.
all of that also happens, but then there's like comic book time. So like how much time has taken place in the Fleischer world since we've seen the last Fleischer story?
It's hard to
Like, is Superman really old over there, or is he still just Superman, catching airplanes or what, like he was in the cartoons?
I'd say that's hard to determine because in the Crisis on Infinite Earths CW crossover, they show footage from like the Green Lantern movie. And it's like, does that mean that the Green Lantern movie is happening like right now?
Yeah, like
Like, why am I
concurrently, like,
seeing old footage?
right. So, like, if all of the, because essentially all of the universes, it reminds me of like when you like do this kind of like, when you look at like stars or something in space, like astronomical things. It's always like shit from the past because like light takes like a long time to get to us, so we can only ever see these stars like years ago. So it kind of reminds me of something like that where it's like you would never really be able to like be up to date on any story unless you're looking at like the most recent book or something like, right, because then like once you like, or like any like currently like ongoing like making new episodes like series, right?
Right?
Like for something like the Legion of Superheroes, right?
Hmm.
We don't know what's been going on since the show stopped making episodes in that universe, like continuity area, right?
Well, there's also a tie-in comic, but we don't know what happened after the tie-in comic. Like, I'm agreeing with what you're saying.
Okay, okay, sure. Like,
Well, we
we
kind of know. That's kind of what
can
I
we
was talking
know
about before.
like
We know,
we would
like,
have
on a
to,
multiverse scale, like, times where it might have been destroyed and times where it
sure,
might have come back and stuff like that.
but I mean like if the Fleischer like cartoon or something is like in a world and they're like everything that has like a universe like that continues like chronologically forward or something such that it's its own universe, probably, like unless it got destroyed
Right.
like in a book or something, then like the only way for you to know what was going on over there would be to them like make a comic book being like, and this is what's been happening in the Fleischer world, or to like make new Fleischer cartoons.
And they do stuff like that. Like there's like a Batman 66 comic that's like it's Adam West Batman and like the shit's like more Adam West stuff. And
Yeah.
then there was a Young Justice comic not too long ago where they went to like the Kingdom Come universe. And it's like, oh, we're seeing stuff that happened like after Kingdom Come that we've like never seen before. Like stuff like that where with DC.
So is it just going to be more common for them to, and let's take a look at that other like comic book continuity and see what they've been up to. Like, are they just going to check in more regularly on some of these like older propertied like universes now?
It's more the idea that like they are doing that and they have the capability to, but it doesn't mean that they will. But I can say there is a good modern track record of it. Speaking of when things happen in relation to other things, you know that Batman Beyond thing that happened on DC Fandom where they're tuning
Yeah,
into what's happening in the Adam
yeah,
West Batman world?
yeah.
So we don't know when that Batman Beyond clip takes place relative to like the Batman Beyond timeline.
Right. Like, is that
We know
season
it's
two,
before
season three?
epilogue, right?
Yeah. Right.
But that's really all we know is that it's like before epilogue.
We don't even know if it's
Oh,
like relative to like the movie or something.
right. But we
Because the movie is also kind of like that. It's like somewhere before epilogue. I don't even know if the movie is like post season three. Probably, maybe. Like it could be.
right. Like things like this can be difficult to tell even when just looking at one property. But now we know that Batman Beyond at that particular point in time in the DC Fandom event is happening at the same time as a specific Adam West episode and like its continuity. So like,
Is it though? Like,
well, they're
because so
getting
like we're
like
getting a transmission,
transmissions
not
from
like
another
like
universe. Is
the
it
the
not
thing
like a
with like
live transmission feed?
I mean, because it's like the star thing. I was talking, like it could be live, like you're seeing it happen in real time, but it's also happening like in the past. Like you can't actually see what's happening in real time unless you had like a way of traveling there really fast or something, right?
Well,
Like what is the
characters.
speed of this transmission that they're picking?
Well, characters a lot of times
Where is it coming from?
they claim it's coming
Like is
from
it traveling
another
like
universe,
through,
which
right,
is
but like
weird.
through like the multiverse or something? Like if it's like a radio wave, like how is it, how does it even get to another universe?
They explain that each Earth in the multiverse is like vibrating at a different frequency or whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess it's like resonant
This footage is
vibrations.
vibrating at a different frequency.
It's starting to. Well, I guess that implies that the vibrational frequency of Adam West Batman can get attuned to the Batman Beyond frequency.
You're like, how do they even watch something from another universe if it's all different like that?
It is an interesting question. Did you know that Barry Allen has this thing he can do called speed mind or something like that, where he can project his consciousness into the speed force and he can use that to perceive other universes like a ghost? He's like done this in the comics before.
I think you're telling me something where the Flash could like see other universes or other like timelines or something.
It might be timelines. See,
I'm not sure what it was, but it was
because
something like that.
stuff like that gets really complicated with DC because of the fact that they don't just do the and now we're looking at another Earth. Because they try to say it as if we're looking at like the same Earth all the time until they like retroactively say,
Well, okay.
nah,
So we're talking about various things, like with the DC, like we don't know when this takes place,
relative to like another
relative
thing.
to, but then like Batman, because there's that like comic Batman Beyond where it's like 40 years, but then like the future of the thing. How does something like that work
I think I know what you're asking. You're saying there are like time discrepancies between
between
statements in
universes?
like a Batman Beyond comic versus statements made in like a Batman Beyond like TV show. Is that what you're bringing up?
No, I mean like because like there was the like because they had Batman Beyond the cartoon, right?
Right.
And then they had cartoon tie-ins, right? And then
Right.
they had like a Batman Beyond like 2016 run or something.
Right. I think I get what you're saying. You're talking about how like the Batman Beyond cartoon and the Batman Beyond cartoon tie-in comic, you can see that they're supposed to be the same thing, but you may not know exactly when certain comic things happen within the cartoon.
I mean,
But then once you get into like the Batman Beyond like comic that's not the cartoon tie-in, but it accepts cartoon lore, but it also accepts like DC continuity lore, but it's also like its own Earth, but it's the future of the main Earth. It's like where the fuck does that take
I just
place,
mean
if
it
anything?
sounds like the different universes don't have to be like concurrent in their timelines,
They don't.
right?
Because we already
Like you
know
can have
that the Batman
right
Beyond universe is just the normal universe, but so many years
in the
ahead.
future. But it can't like a whole lot of timelines or like universes be like that. Like when you're like we're tuning in like the Batman Beyond to like the Adam like is the Adam West happening at the same time but in the 60s like how does because essentially it's like looking through time kind of
Well, it's not looking through time. It's looking at like another universe, but that universe hasn't like for them it's the
is in
1960s, but it's
yeah
not like you're looking back in time. It's just that's how far their world has progressed versus yours.
okay but like but then the Batman like Adam West show theoretically because all of the universes have their own or all of like the media have their own universe that have been ongoing stories why wouldn't when you like looked at the Adam West world wouldn't it be like Adam West world but 2020 like why is it the 60s Batman Adam West version that you see in that transmission
Because of the
if
fact
that world has like a time that keeps going like every world should have like a chronology that keeps going past when like their show got canceled right
right.
so if you tuned into that world it would always just be that future 2020 or like some other whenever you took a look at it right
Well, no, because of the
right
fact that you can have the time discrepancy, like we're saying. Like when someone on Earth Zero, which is like the main comic book Earth, look
there is no main comic book Earth Jet
right,
you
they're all
fucked up
important. I see what you're saying. That's what Jim Lee's trying to push. I'm not drinking his Kool-Aid. Earth Zero, main comic book Earth. When they look at the
what
yeah,
wait
when they look at
there's no main comic. That's what I was getting at before when I was trying to like ask about like the canon. Like, if everything matters and all that stuff, then there is nothing special about like an Earth Zero. There's no main continuity story universe place.
because it's
Like, there's no like
all
main continuity
major
Batman.
continuity or whatever.
Like, it doesn't actually exist. Like, it's just not a thing.
Well,
That could just be where all the main like new story books are like coming out of, but that's not like a main canon thing
but it's like relative,
because there is no
what I
main
would say.
because canon is always just some delineation of this is like the truth or like the lore of like the story and this other stuff isn't, you know, like apocrypha or something.
Right.
But if everything is canon, then there is no
Main.
like yeah, there's nothing that like all of the apocrypha is also in this lore story canon thing, that the term kind of like has no meaning.
Well, Jim
If
Lee,
everything's canon, then
Jim,
how can you even say there's like a canon?
well, Jim Lee also says your favorite one is the one that matters.
That's just like a rhetorical thing. Like that doesn't sound like it matters.
Well, it just sounds like if you ask the publisher of DC who is like the main Superman, he would just say, "Who's your favorite?" And if you were like Christopher Reeves, he'd be like, "That's the main one." To you,
Right.
like it's up to you to pick your main, but you can just have your main and you can claim your main. You know what I mean?
But that claim has no bearing on any kind of like what you're talking about, like Earth Zero. Are you saying that like the canon, like Earth Zero is like the canon world? Like you, like as that person making a claim?
I I haven't decided on my main yet. I kind of want to
Hmm.
read the Infinite Crisis comic that's based on the MOBA because I read it a
I
little
mean, because
bit.
I can get like having multiple ones that you like care about, or like they're your favorite versions of a Superman, but that doesn't like, because canon is always just it is or it isn't part of the lore, always from some sort of authority that has control over the lore. Like it's always like some kind of like priest or like pope, like whoever is like writing the new version of the Bible gets to like choose which like apocrypha book is or isn't like makes the cut. You can't have like a decentralized, you can choose whichever the thing, and then it'd also be canon. It'd be like if everyone could like write their own version of the Bible. Like you can, but that doesn't make it like canon to anything. Do you get what I'm saying?
Eh? Like I don't know. Like it's I see what you're saying because if you were to say Vampire Batman is my
Like
main
if there's no
Batman, that doesn't
authority
make any of
to
the other
decide
things not
canon,
canon.
then how can Jim Lee say that anything is canon? Like who's Jim Lee to decide what is and isn't canon?
Well, he's the publisher. Like he
Right,
could
but
just
he's
say
also
that like
saying that everything's canon. So why do we have to listen to Jim Lee then?
we can just pick. Well, I mean it's weird. He's
Jim
trying
Lee's
to say
like
two things at the same
giving
time.
away the authority of making canonical decisions. And he's just like dissolving that power almost, right?
It's weird because he's kind of because he's telling us we can like pick the one that matters, but he's also saying they all matter, which is a way of him
But that also
saying,
is meaningless, right? Like
right, whatever
if
you pick is the meaningless thing, I would say. Like if you
just
say,
saying anything is like I get the saying that like the things like in the TV shows, like the live action and all the cartoons and all the movies, all of those are like in the lore as like a place that they can like cross over to. I get that, right?
right,
The other bit of like every like I get that, but I don't get how that means everything. Like the picture, I don't think that has any meaningful, like any meaning in that. Like it sounds just like empty. Like, does it even matter? Like, what does that even mean? Like, I
I
still don't get the significance of that.
I think that's Jim Lee's way of saying like don't think you have to look at certain stuff. Like, don't think that because all the comics right now take place on Earth Zero, that you have to care about Earth Zero. If your favorite
Right, but
thing
that
is
was
like the
already the case.
DCEU,
Like, you could be like Watchtower Database. He doesn't have to read the comics and he could only just focus on the DCAU, that was already like the like because readers and things didn't have to care about Earth Zero before, and now they still don't have to care about Earth Zero. Like nothing's changed from that perspective.
Well, kind of. I think what Jim Lee's trying to say is like, if I only said that everything mattered and everything was canon, then someone might feel obligated to look at everything. Like, you know how I've talked to you about how with comic books, you don't go all the way back to the beginning and read forward? Like, it's not like you go to like the first Superman comic and then read to the modern day. You just kind of find somewhere that you want to fit in and then you just like start reading. If Jim
Right.
Lee said like everything matters and everything's canon and he didn't say anything else, someone could be like, well, I'm too intimidated to go into DC because if
Okay,
everything's
okay, okay.
important,
Sure.
then I have
But
to look at
canon that
everything.
be squared with what you're talking about like later with this like Snyder thing of like they remember their entire like histories.
Well, with the they remember their entire histories thing, I personally think that's stupid. Uh,
Right. But I'm wondering like what are they remember like if the the crisis event thing was just like the perspective of like the publishers showing like a universe and then changing to a different one. Like this is like the new 52 universe and this is the rebirth universe, right?
right?
So then the Earth Zero guys, they would only be able to like see like what would it because it's not like their history. Like, what do you mean seeing all of their? Because like they're just different guys on different universes.
See, that's the thing is that
They wouldn't be able to like the Rebirth guy shouldn't be able to see the New 52 stuff because that's just a different Superman. Like
it,
all it's like more segmented, right?
the problem is that with DC, it's like both things are true. Like for
Yeah.
DC
Like
Rebirth,
this is what I was trying to get at with like the Ben 10 thing, where it's like, is this like just like I was asking like, is the Ben 10 essentially like in this paradigm of like there's just separate universe guys and each of the shows is just like a separate Ben? But you're like, no, they're like kind of like doing a like what they used to say for the DC, where it's like a the same character or something like that, but it's like being reconstructed at like a cosmic level.
to fill in the audience, because the audience has never heard us talk about that before.
Yeah.
In Ben 10, they have this concept of like a celestial sapien, which is essentially like a god. And they say whenever
God, Alien.
God alien. Whenever they have like a continuity change or like the art style changes or like a voice actor
Like the sequel
changes in
shows.
Ben 10, then or if it's like live action because that's not an art style change, which
Yeah,
is like
that's
completely
also a
different.
thing they have. And it's
Um,
also canon.
then they say that what happened is that a celestial sapien like reconstructed reality. So essentially like they changed the universe to be like that, but it's still always the same universe. It's like if you had one big book and then it's not that like we switched over to a new book, it's just we rewrote the first book and we just keep rewriting it to make it different.
Yeah, you have like one manuscript and you keep editing it and then changing it back.
Right.
And but it's always just whatever the current like edition version is the thing that's they're going with, like the new show or whatever, right? Yeah.
Right.
It sounds like DC had like that kind of like with these like Flashpoint crisis event things. And then they also have this multiverse like where it will just like shift to showing like other universes, but then the other one like also still exists like in parallel at the same time. Or at least they're inconsistent and then they keep like saying both at various times.
Yes. So like when you talk about like what is the new 52? The new
Right.
52 is like its own Earth, but it's also the past, but it's also not the past because it got undone. So it's like people like essentially what Ryan was talking about earlier is that Scott Snyder, the writer of Dark Knight's Death Metal, says that in Death Metal, the characters are soon going to remember their entire publication history. So Batman's going to remember everything that's ever happened to him throughout all the
Right, but which
comics.
Batman is the Batman that's in Death Metal? It's not like the New 52 Batman. So why would he remember New 52 stuff?
Because
Like,
it's weird.
is this like not like a history of the character, like memory thing? It's just like he's being like injected with like foreign Batman memories? Like, why?
It's confusing because they never acknowledge the fact that because of time travel, the New 52 never happened. So it's weird,
If the New 52 never happened,
right?
then is there no like New 52 continuity universe that we can like go to
No, we
now?
know there's a New 52 universe. Like the
But you said it never happened.
see, here's what happened. In Doomsday Clock,
Or here's
man,
not what happened, because it
well,
never happened.
check this out. Dr. Manhattan in Doomsday Clock is like I went back in time, and me meddling with time is what caused the New 52 to occur.
Yes.
Then Dr. Manhattan goes back and he undoes his meddling, which essentially undoes the New 52. But after he goes back, he goes, but all the stuff happened on all these other worlds. Like it's post him undoing the New 52 that he reveals, well, there's a New 52 Earth. And there's also like a like pre-crisis Earth and a post-crisis,
So okay,
a
okay.
rebirth
So if
Earth.
he's finding out that there's a New 52 Earth after he decided not to create, or like after he reversed his creation of it, how did that New 52 Earth get created then? Like, was it not from him? Are there like multiple New 52 Earths, and like one's getting created and then uncreated in the Doomsday Clock, and then another one just exists separately?
Well, the Doomsday Clock Earth isn't the New 52 Earth, it's the Rebirth Earth. And the Rebirth Earth has. See,
Okay, okay.
it's
So
fucking
so
dumb
he's
because of time
in the
travel,
Rebirth universe, right?
right?
And he went back in time and he fucked it up so that it looks all and like is totally just the same as the New 52.
Well, no, no,
But
no,
it
no, 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 no,
is
no,
what?
no, no. It's not that. Because now it's getting really fuckety, right? So
It
Dr.
always was.
Manhattan had to have gone to the pre-Flashpoint Earth and fucked with. Well, damn. Hold on. Shit. So hold on. So you got to keep in mind that the New 52 isn't only Dr. Manhattan. Because all Dr. Manhattan does is he changes up how Superman becomes Superman and he prevents the JSA from forming. And that's like his contribution to the New 52. But also, the Flash does his Flashpoint bullshit that combines main continuity with like the Wildstorm universe and like other properties
Yeah.
that DC owns, like Vertigo. So even when Dr. Manhattan tampers with time and goes, well, I never caused the New 52, technically the Flash's influence is still there. Like Wildstorm is still a part of everything, and Vertigo is still a part of everything. So I don't know if Dr. Manhattan altered the past before Flashpoint. He couldn't have, actually. He would have had to have altered the past of post Flashpoint, pre New 52. Like a world we just never fucking saw. Would be the one that he like went back in time and changed. Does that make sense?
Um, no, maybe? I don't.
Okay, so like the Flash combining our world with Wildstorm and with Vertigo is like its own change that would have had its own repercussions. But we never got to see that world until after Dr. Manhattan went back in time and undid his change that he made to that world, to Superman's origin and to the origin of the Justice Society of America. So actually, no, we still never see that world. Because that world. Ah, oh, fuck, hold on. I mean, I guess we are seeing it now, but we didn't see. Yeah, okay, that we are seeing that now. We're now in post Flashpoint, but with no Dr. Manhattan New 52 shift. We're in that world now. And it's called Rebirth. Oh wait, what
And
the
that's
fuck?
like the Earth Zero thing.
Well, speaking of Earth Zero,
Like when you say like now, like where is Rebirth then? Like if that's what Rebirth is, like is Rebirth even still like the newest like
like thing.
thing?
Um, I think so. 5G was supposed to be the next thing, and they say that in Doomsday Clock. They're like, in 2021, we're gonna get like 5G. Like Dr. Manhattan says it, and now they're like, we're not gonna do it. And I'm like, you're already fucking up. You're already fucking up the thing that you established.
Yeah.
But the
Well, maybe 5G does exist. We just won't see it.
oh
Like it'll
gosh,
be
and then they
some
like cross over
parallel
with it later.
5G universe. We just won't ever see it until they get around to showing us the 5G universe.
I guess like
Like
that makes
if
sense.
if
I
if Dr.
maybe.
Manhattan is like in Doomsday Clock book or whatever, being like in 2021, we'll see but like it already existed, right?
Well,
Like
hold
in the
on, hold on.
past of the 5G universe.
Doomsday Clock already makes things murky, anyways. Because Dr. Manhattan does stuff like I go back to 1938, I see like the first appearance of Superman. And then he's like, and then I go to 1985,
Okay. So
I
what they
see like,
do is in like the production history, they're saying like now that like whenever we do these like big crisis or like New 52 to Rebirth like shifts, it's like from one universe like looking at it to another universe looking at it. But Dr. Manhattan is essentially traveling between those two places via like four-dimensional time travel instead of like a universe time travel jump or a universe traveling, right?
right. So he's like saying, if you go back to 1938, then you're in like this older continuity Superman.
It's like the art style is 1938 as opposed to just being like a rebirth art style but showing those same events.
Right. So you end up with this weird thing where it's like they are their own universes, but they're also things that exist in time. But they're also things that shouldn't exist in time because we'll have events that just straight up say, and now that never happened, or it happened differently, or stuff like that. But technically it did because you can go back to them, like through time travel. And then
Right.
also they have hyper time where they're like, well, all stories exist in hyper time and can intersect and like stuff that didn't originally
Okay.
happen in
So
the story.
if Dr. Manhattan went forward, like instead of back to see old Superman, like 39, so if he went forward, would he see like Batman Beyond?
Well, the stuff that he was talking about, because we never see him go forward, but he talks about what
Right.
is going to come. So he says stuff like 5G is going to happen. And then he says there's going to be like a revitalization of like the older characters at some point. And he says we're going to have a secret crisis where he hints at like a Marvel crossover. Like he kind of does start laying out what's going to happen in the future. He also says that like we're gonna see Superman's origin retold again and again, and he like starts naming like years, like in 2035, or another rocket lands in
Right.
Kansas,
He
and
starts
shit
like
like that.
giving the whole like, Marvel movie timeline, but for DC in the comic book version of that.
Right.
But it's weird. Why would you put that in the book if like you just can also and then not do that? Like,
Right.
why would you put that in the book
It's because
if it's not actually like confirmed or guaranteed that
that is
you
actually
are like as DC as publishers even going to do that?
it's
Because that means your
because
book is when you decide not to do like 5G.
right. It's because Dan Didio, I believe, was like a co-publisher at the time. And I've
Okay,
heard that I don't know if his name is Didio or Didio,
video.
but Dan Didio or
Dan.
whatever was like
Dan.
5G. We're gonna do 5G and it's gonna fix everything.
So they had like changed like management
Pretty
or like
much, yeah.
executives.
When
Yeah.
Dan Didio or Didio was removed,
Just say Dan.
sure, when Dan was
Like we
removed,
we know the Dan.
they were like, fuck 5G. And then they just didn't do
So they're
5G.
not like so they're not found like to honor the continuity that they said they would do in Doomsday Clock,
Right. Because
even though it's in the
essentially
book
one guy who was
of the
pushing
future.
it who was everybody's boss. And he's like not the
Yeah.
boss anymore. And then they're like, well, we don't
So
want
is
to do.
he the reason that they wrote those things into the Doomsday Clock?
Well, if he's the reason for 5G and then he leaves and they're like, we're not going to do 5G anymore,
Like did
then
Dan walk in the room and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're doing Doomsday Clock? Don't forget to say that we're gonna do 5G." Like, is he the one like telling like executive meddling to like put his 5G beloved like storyline as like set up in the dialogue?
I don't
Maybe.
know. Because imagine you're like an employee for DC and you're like, oh, we're going to do 5G? Oh man, I have a story with Dr. Manhattan who can see through time. If I just know that that's what we're going to do next, I can
Yeah, you can
put that in the
foreshadow it.
book.
But
Right.
the thing about foreshadowing is if you start changing things halfway through, your foreshadowing didn't foreshadow the thing that actually happened,
Right.
which is what happened here. Like, where they're foreshadowing 5G, but then they didn't do 5G. So now their foreshadowing is,
Nothing.
yeah. Or is it worse than nothing? Because it's not that they, because like foreshadowing nothing, I always think like if you didn't foreshadow, you would be fine. But now their foreshadowing is wrong.
Right. They're saying that there's going to be like this big change that happens and then we're just going to not get that big change.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean that I guess that's what happens when you like have these kind of like stories that aren't actually planned out. Like where you have something like a novel series or like One Piece or something where he's like, yeah, I got it like planned out all the way through. You just have to actually like, get us there, like, as the audience reading the book, right?
Hmm.
But like DC in this isn't like that. So like if Oda wanted to foreshadow 5G in One Piece, he could do it and it would actually happen, right? Like his foreshadowings are for things that actually do happen. Like they're like Chekhov's guns or what he does actually fire the gun at some point, right?
Right.
But like with the DC thing, it sounds like because it's like a weird, not like a single author, like and this like corporate like executive shuffling, then if they tried to foreshadow stuff, then they'll just be wrong. Like, was it of them to foreshadow things like that when it's not a guarantee?
Well, I
Because Jet's like, yeah, the employee like thought it would be, but that employee was wrong
but does that mean
in the
that you
end.
should like never foreshadow stuff? Like,
If you're
because
gonna
then it just
keep
sounds like
changing
things
your
will just
mind of
happen.
what you're gonna do, then every time you foreshadow, it'll just be wrong.
Well, it's a thing where
Like
if
if this
I'm
becomes a pattern, like if Dr. Manhattan shows up again in a second Doomsday Clock, and then they're like, "Yo, you said 5G would happen, but it didn't. What's the deal, Dr. Manhattan? What's he gonna say?"
he might say something like The events
Time
of
got
Dark
weird.
Knight's death metal fucked it up in it messed
Sure.
up time or something. Something
Timey-wimey.
happens. Yeah.
Are you gonna make more predictions, Dr. Manhattan? And you'd be like, I don't know if I should, because time could get weird again, and then they'd be wrong again. So, like, what's the point of Dr. Manhattan giving, like, if in the story or something like that can have these like chronological events, like in time that can like mess up his predictions, like his predictions aren't like if you're a fortune teller who can't actually see the future, maybe you shouldn't give predictions of the future.
Fair. Um,
Like what's that character from like the Legion of Superhero who can like see the future?
crap. What gets me, Ryan, is that
Has he ever been wrong? Or
it's a
he or whoever?
girl in the
Yeah,
cartoon. I'm
yeah.
not sure if it's always a
Has
girl.
she ever been wrong?
I think her name's Dream Girl, and because she specifically has the visions
Right,
in her
yeah.
dreams. In the Legion of Superheroes cartoon, no. I think her thing
Right.
is like literally always right, is how it
Because they
works.
write it such that she's not wrong.
Right.
DC Comics though, they're not doing that. They have fortune tellers, but then they're not actually doing the follow through on a consistent story
Well, Dream Girls
for the
is
predictions.
interesting because you can change it. It's like the idea that if you know what's gonna happen, you can do it differently.
Can you though? Predestination Jet. Can you actually change what's going to happen in the future? You can if you're talking to Dr. Manhattan. You can change that shit. 5G didn't happen. Got him.
Now, I have like some additional like related topics to talk about.
Yeah,
Remember when I mentioned that Barry Allen read the Jay Garrick comics and that inspired him to become the Flash?
right.
Why is it that like in Rebirth, people aren't reading like New 52 comics?
Because that's like because you're like, if this is like a weird precedent where like the new generation reads the old generation as comics, it's kind of because like Superman and all them are still part of like Silver Age generations stuff. Like they're all real in both places at both those times, like relatively.
Right.
Um, like you can, but then doesn't that just make all this like continuity hopping and like universe thing like even more confusing, I
I mean,
guess?
in the multiverse, they've
Because then
already
you're like making all of those guys like some sort of like Superboy Prime where he can just like see the things as comics. But like if all of those are also like parallel like universes that have like ongoing stories unseen, then like maybe I don't know.
because this is actually already a plot point in Multiversity. There's a scene where this one guy approaches a hero from our universe and he calls him by his
When you say our universe, what the
shit.
fuck are you
I
talking
get what
about?
you're
Like
saying
Earth
with the confusion. Earth
30
Zero.
something, or
Earth
is this like
Zero is the normal reference point. That's what I'm talking about.
stop saying our universe?
It's
What
the
do you mean Earth
habit. It's like
Zero?
this Jim Lee thing is new, where it's like it all matters. So it's
I
difficult
know,
to
but like
catch
why
it
is that the
relative.
habit though? Because we don't live in Earth Zero.
Fair. So
Like we never did. I don't know why you keep saying our world.
I got you. In Multiversity, there are two characters who are from different universes, and one of them rolls up on the other and says, "Oh, hey, like it's great to meet you. Your name?" And then they're like, "Whoa, I've like never heard of you before. How do you know who I am?" And they're like, "I've read all your comics. I'm like a huge fan. Like in my world, you're fictional, and I just know
Right.
everything about you."
I mean, you can't, because like the thing about those comics, because you can just be like the Savage Dragon ones, where it's like comics, but of the things that actually happened. Yeah, just like the like in what's the movie? It's like is it like Galaxy Quest? It's like the Star Trek spoof with like Tim Allen,
Galaxy
where these
Quest.
aliens like intercept the transmission of the TV show, but then they think it's like historical documents, right?
Right.
So like is is the stories that the guy's reading in the comics, is that like historical documents to the guy he's just meeting? This is like real universe history.
So the
Like, did everything
comics,
happen in those comics he read actually happen? So could he like tell him his own backstory to him? He's like, I read it on your comic, and that guy would like, whoa, that comic knows everything about me,
so the
like even my
comics,
internal monologues.
the comics are
Like, how
accurate.
accurate are those comics?
They're like
Right.
100% accurate. Because remember when the Flash is reading the Jay Garrick comics, it's revealed that like you're the guy I was reading about in the comic. Like you're just the same dude. And those adventures that I read in those comics just happened on
Okay. Okay.
your Earth.
Right. Like, so if someone goes up to like say Malcolm, right,
Right? Malcolm from
and
Savage Dragon, for those who don't
yeah,
know.
and then they'd be like at the convention thing, where like with the comics, how would the comic that like Malcolm and the fan are reading know the internal thoughts of like his dad? Because that's just like an event that actually happened. Like, who is writing the comic? Who would be privy to this information? And I guess the same thing applies to like the DC ones with the other universe thing. Like who is writing these comics, and how do they know what's happening in the other universe? If it's just like another universe that's happening thing, like a story there. Like, how is the comics so accurate?
So we're Earth 33,
Yeah,
and we write comics about like all these other Earths,
right.
right? Um,
And ours are 100% accurate to the events in all these other Earths, always, without a
that's
doubt.
because then you're gonna be like, so why Dr. Manhattan say 5G was gonna
Yeah, like what the
happen?
contradict? No, because our comics, DC, the DC or the comics from Earth 33, the DC Comics ones,
Right.
are always really fuckety in terms of continuity. And they're always like changing shit and being wrong relative to themselves and their own stories, I guess, because they keep changing like perspectives and point of views and like the rules of what we're reading, like on the fly over decades. So I guess the Earth 33 or the World 33, same thing, right? Earth 33 comics, at least as far as the DC ones go, aren't 100% accurate. Because you have guys like Doomsday Clock where he's just fucking up,
Now,
right?
they would say we're 100% accurate, and the comics would try and make the claim
Because like
that they're
our
accurate.
comic did 100% accurately record
The fuck up.
the fuck, yeah. Ah, gosh.
Um, it gets weird. So I've talked to you before
It
about
gets meta, Jet. It gets meta.
it does get
And then the meta is a house of cards made out of meta. And then it all
so
comes tumbling down.
our Earth in the DC multiverse. I've talked to you about this before. It has a lot
Why?
of
Why would you do
confusing
that?
things.
Why
Wait,
would
what'd
you
you say?
put your own universe
In the multiverse?
in the story?
It's gross because we're Earth 33, but we're also Earth Prime. Not to be confused with Prime Earth, which is
Not to be
zero.
confused with the Earth that is created in the All-Star Superman, which is also just our Earth.
And we also are outside of hyper time, is the way that our world has been described. because we
Why?
perceive it as a comic book because we're so far above it, like we're like higher level beings.
Are we like nine dimensional relative to the comic books?
Like that's one way that it's been perceived, but we're also fourth
And if
dimensional
so,
if we're on Earth
can we
33.
actually run into Mr. Terrific or something? Like, can he reach our heights? Or are we so far high above Mr. Terrific?
Now, Animal Man has talked to Grant Morrison before.
What?
Like he's like met
Right,
Grant
because Grant
Morrison, or
Morrison, like,
whatever.
what draws him in himself into the book?
Yeah. Um,
Why?
there's a whole bunch of stuff like that, Ryan.
Mark Hamill? Talking to Mark Hamill, voicing Mark Hamill
That happened in
in the
Justice League
show.
Action,
Yeah.
is what he's referring to. Um,
Um,
Ryan, one thing that I'd like to talk about with you is how, with all these worlds that continue to persist, like afterwards, um,
right.
they are weird because you have stuff like Superman came from pre Flashpoint Earth to our world. And it's like, okay, so does that mean
When you say our world, do you mean Earth 33?
that, you know what the fuck I mean? Earth Zero.
No, I don't know. Our
So,
world should be and
Earth
should only be
33
referred to Earth 33 in
or
this
Earth
context,
Prime,
right?
which is the other name for it.
No, 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 no. They're different places, right?
Well, no. Well,
Well, yes. Because Earth Prime got destroyed and then brought back and probably destroyed again.
so should we call Superboy Prime Superboy 33? Or should he be
No,
Superboy
because he's
Prime?
not from Earth 33.
But
Earth
Earth
33
3.
doesn't have a Superboy.
So DC Comics official website says that
Yeah.
Earth 33 is also called Earth Prime, meaning that our world is the same world that Superboy Prime came from.
Well, then where's Superboy? I don't see him.
Superboy Prime, remember, he like gets his powers and then like almost immediately gets swept up into multiverse shit
Right.
and he's just like not here.
So I didn't see him because he got swept away.
Pretty much, yeah. Like they're saying Superboy Prime is like a real guy who existed in our world, which is really weird to do, but Marvel's also done that with Gwenpool. And then they're like, but now he's not here, but he was. And they're sticking by that for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Earth Prime and Earth 33 are ostensibly the same.
So should Superboy Prime also be Superboy 33?
No, it sounds like we should all be dead. Because according to Superboy Prime, his world got destroyed.
Yeah, but his
And that's
world
the
got
world where we
destroyed
are.
in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which never happened because of convergence.
Okay, so we're not dead.
Right.
Good.
But then recently, like I think this week, a
Like, so it's
comic
like
came
if
out.
Superboy Prime and thus his world is our world, then
Right.
I guess like they have to undo its destruction that he said earlier. Otherwise, we'd all be dead,
Right.
right?
Right.
So good on Convergence for confirming we didn't all die back in Crisis of Infinite Earths.
Um, Real quick,
IRL.
let me read you the description
Yeah.
for Dark Knight's Death Metal Multiverse's End, which came out this week.
Versus end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think you can do that. Like definitionally. I don't that seems pretty suspect.
So here's the description. Perpetua, the mother of all existence, has culled all life and creation in the multiverse, condensing
Including
all
Earth 30.
beings to one planet. Guess what planet they condensed them all to, Ryan?
Earth Zero.
Earth Prime. In her quest for power and dominance, she rules absolutely and in totality, using her children, the monitors and anti-monitors, as her heralds and destructors. But a group of heroes has banded together across multiple worlds in a last-ditch effort to stop her from destroying all of existence. Owlman, President Superman, Iris West, Captain
Presence.
Carrot, Guy Gardner and others have chosen to make their final stand in a battle they're destined to lose. So literally this week, all the universes combined with ours,
It sounds like
all
the
one.
Savage Dragon thing.
No,
Like
because
all
the
these.
Savage Dragon universe combination is like we just remember everything that happened on every universe. This is like there's only one world now. We had 54 Earths or whatever in the like.
No, 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 no. There's an infinite multiverse.
Yeah, but Perpetua never fucks with the infinite one. She's like specifically fucking with the 52 ones. I couldn't tell you
Why?
why. I don't know. I don't.
Okay. So she's like, oh, the Snyder cut, you're fine.
Right,
Not Snyder cut, also fine. They're separate universes, don't you know?
right. Which is that's also weird. That's a whole
Does
other.
every movie that's essentially in a series of movies have its own universe? Like if does Wonder Woman have its own universe that is separate from the universe of like Man of Steel?
No. Like the
Why
Wonder
not?
Woman movie exists
Why
in
not?
two universes. It exists
Yeah.
in the non-Snyder Cut DCEU universe, and it exists in the Snyder
But why is the
DCEU
division
universe.
between the Snyder cut?
I missed your question. I'm sorry.
Like why is there only two DCEUs divided across the Snyder cut? Like why doesn't all of the movies have their own universe?
Because movies that are set in the continuity of the other films, they don't need like excuse me, they're like already establishing that they exist within all the other things. You know what I mean? Like if Wonder
Right,
Woman,
but you can always just have like whichever the newest movie is, that universe has the events of the previous movie. Like the what's the newest DCEU movie like in the timeline?
the latest one is Harley Quinn, right? Because they rename Birds of Prey later on.
Right, okay. So like the Harley Quinn movie um can just like its universe can have all of the events of the previous movie, right?
But
But there can also
why?
be a separate universe that only has the events of like say Man of Steel.
I feel like that
Why is that not the case? Like why aren't
because
there like a dozen different universes, each with slight variations on the events that they have?
because you wouldn't have a dozen. You would have like a shit ton. Like imagine if you were
Right.
like every comic book issue is its own universe or like every episode of a show is its own.
Right.
Like why? That's what
If
I'm saying. There's no reason
everything's
to do that.
canon and everything has its own universe someplace, why is every piece of media, because they're talking about like all these different like medias and like movies, TV shows, so that should be like every episode, right?
No, because they're
They're
like
all separate pieces of
no,
media.
because they're in continuity with each other. The only thing that
The
separates
later,
a
so this is what I
universe
get
is like
with
its
continuity,
own.
right? The last episode, like epilogue of like Batman Beyond, is in continuity with everything that happened before, right?
Right.
Because they wrote that last. The first episode has nothing to do with epilogue because that was written years later.
But it's in the same continuity on the
Continuity
same
only goes
Earth.
one way, and that way is whichever was written last.
I
The same
disagree.
thing like with canon, like it doesn't.
Like, if I'm reading Superman issue number, well, that's actually
Because
a
you
bad
can have
example. I
a
can't use
Batman
that.
Beyond universe, right?
Well, there are
That
multiple Batman Beyond universes.
right. One of those Batman Beyond universes can just have the events of like the first episode, and then none of the later episodes are in that universe. You can have another universe where it has the events of all of the episodes, like up until including epilogue, and they can both exist. They
But
both
that
should exist,
that
right?
only ever comes into play when you have episodes that you say aren't in continuity.
No,
Then
no,
it
no,
becomes
no,
its
no,
own universe.
no.
It's like each episode.
Every piece of media should have its own universe. And you should have hundreds, thousands of like really similar, parallel, almost identical ones, because the only difference is this universe includes the next issue of the story.
But they are also saying that all these universes are persistent, though.
Because isn't
Meaning,
that how like things like the like like many worlds interpret, like they're all like you can have ones that are just like really similar.
yeah, the many worlds interpretation is based on like the really similar thing.
Right.
But that's not
So
how they're
shouldn't
doing this one.
that apply to all of these different media episode universes in DC?
Well,
Like that same kind of principle. Or like the only thing different is that between like this Batman Beyond universe and this Batman Beyond universe is this one includes episode 1 and this one includes episode 1 and 2. And you have a third universe that includes episodes 1, 2 and 3.
that doesn't make sense though, because they're all
And then you have like
persistent. Like,
thousands
keep
of
going. Like, why is it that the one that has episode one in it doesn't have the other ones? Does it die? Like, is it like boom? It like blew up.
No, it just
Episode
also
one's the only thing that
exists
happened.
somewhere in like a many worlds kind of way. There's just like thousands of these infinite worlds in an infinite
But
multiverse.
the mini worlds thing is like you can pick whether or not you want a ham sandwich or a PB and J. And in one universe you have the ham sandwich, and in one you have the PB and J. But you keep going. Like, it's not like and then it
Right.
stops in that universe. Nothing else happens. You only
Yes,
ate
they
the
keep
sandwich. You
going.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you. So I don't get when you're like in this universe only
In the same
episode one
way that
happened,
all
because
of
it's
the
like what
different like
happens after
DC
episode one.
like right, there's a whole in the same way that like what happened after like the end of the Adam West Batman cart show like in the 60s, there's just like 50 years of additional stories in that universe.
Right. There
Right,
are.
but that should happen to each episode in that show.
I
It should
don't
have its
see
own
why it would
universe.
happen to each episode. Because if they're in
Yeah.
continuity with each other, then that means they happened on the same Earth.
Or cuz like we're talking about like the perspective, right? Of like between like 52 and Rebirth is like a separate universe, right?
Right.
Why is that not the case between every episode or every issue of a comic? That you
Because
just switch to a similar universe that is almost the same, but not.
because the difference between like the New 52 universe and the Rebirth universe is that in the New 52 universe, Dr. Manhattan doesn't go back and undo everything. Things just stay on the New 52 course. Just like how the pre-crisis universe is a universe, and this is gross to say, where Crisis on Infinite Earths never happened, because that's technically ours too. But it's like if they kept telling the stories the same way they were before, and it just continued to expand like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they're saying, is that like instead of dropping and changing continuity, those are Earths where we didn't change it. Like, if we started telling those stories again, it would show what those worlds would be like now. But if, like, you know how Alan Scott, Green Lantern, died in like pre Flashpoint continuity? If you went back to that Earth, he would just still be dead. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay. Let me try and get what I was trying to say, right? Okay. So you know how we're talking about like the Batman Beyond, there's like time travel and it's like unclear of like when we're seeing a universe in its like timeline, right?
kind of. I mean, it's not, excuse me, completely unclear. Because for Batman Beyond, they tell us it's so many years
Right.
after like what we're seeing in Earth Zero at that moment.
Um
So we know how it is relative, and then um we know how Adam West is relative to Batman Beyond. The only issue is we don't know when that clip happens within
okay.
its own
So
continuity.
the Legion of Superheroes, right?
Right.
They're in like the year 3000 or something, right?
They're in the 31st century, I think.
right. So before you were talking about like when we look at our world, it had only progressed. Like say like the Batman Beyond looking at like the Adam West world, it only progressed to like the '60s. Like, but that's not how time works, right? It just keeps going. Like there's post '60s content to see going thousands of years into the future, like all the way to like Adam West, Legion of Superheroes in the year 3000, right?
But we've
Like
established
when
that
does it
like
stop? When does any of those like ongoing stories stop? They don't. They just
they
keep
don't.
going into the future.
Right.
Right.
But you can have worlds that have like relative time, like Earth Zero and the Batman Beyond Earth, where Batman
How can
Beyond
you have
is so many.
relative time and then also have like it just keeps going?
But you also have like relevant physics too. Like how Captain Carrot's universe has like cartoon physics. Like, is it that weird that like weird like was not I shouldn't say weird. That like Earth Zero is like behind like the Batman
No,
Beyond
because
Earth,
time is just a point of view.
and so are these worlds, technically, you know?
But those worlds aren't there because essentially you're demarcating like a present
Which
in another universe that's different from your present. Like if you look at it, like okay, so when Batman Beyond, right? Because they're in like the 2040s or something, right? And they look at the transmission for like the Adam West world, and it's like in the 1960s. Uh, is that the present of that world in the 1960s, or is that the past of that world, where like it's like in the 2040s, but they're only seeing the events of the 1960s?
I would say that it
Because that world has a future that does happen,
the world does have a future that
and
does
but
happen,
there's a present.
but it just may
Like,
not have happened yet, Ryan.
what do you mean it hasn't happened? Because
Because of the
present is
Earth
like a point
Zero
of
Batman
view.
Beyond thing. Like what we talked about before. Because that's just written into the thing that the Batman Beyond world
So I'm
is
not
just
talking about like Batman
ahead of
Beyond is
ours.
X years. I'm not talking about that. I just mean like them seeing transmissions from other universes. Like that's just the example. Happens to be the Batman Beyond one.
But I'm saying that, like, in the same way that Earth Zero is X number of years away from Batman Beyond, Adam West could be X numbers away from Earth Zero and X numbers away, well, I guess Y, like, years away from, like, Batman Beyond. You can
Okay,
have these discrepancies in years.
but time doesn't have an actual present. Like if Batman Beyond people, if they look to see like the Legion of Superheroes show instead, and they see the events of the year 3000, right?
Right.
They could also see the event potentially of
Of
like the
Adam
day
West,
before that event. Like they
what
could get a
before?
transmission from like season 1 or season 2 of like Adam West Batman, which is like the present of the Adam West universe.
They might be looking at the present of the Adam West
But
universe.
can they also see the past and the future of the Adam West universe?
Not without like tuning into like the past, like unless they can see the like
Like, why are you assuming that the thing they're tuning into is like alive the present?
I've never seen them look into another universe and it not be the present. Because we're talking about like comics where looking into other universes is just already a thing that people do. I've never seen someone be like, we're looking at Earth 3 right now, but it's the past of Earth 3. And then when we go,
Like with time travel, you would essentially need some sort of temporal coordinate, like a fourth dimension coordinate, like to place yourself on the timeline somewhere, right?
what? I mean,
Like if
it
you want to
doesn't
like
that depend
go
on your
there
like
or
your
like
weird time travel rules?
sure.
Yeah, like that
What
sounds
are
just
the weird
relative.
time travel rules of DC?
We haven't really been talking about DC's time travel that much. So it depends on if you're traveling through normal time or hyper time. To travel through normal time, you can just kind of be fast. That's how they've established it. Like pre-crisis Superman,
Run into the
which doesn't really
past.
mean anything. He could fly so fast that they would show like the years passing by. And he's like, now I'm in the past or I'm in the future. Like they would do stuff like that. So speed has always been like the factor. But then you have people like Booster Gold, where it's not that he's going fast, like it's like a portal or something. Like his
He's
isn't
got like a
speed.
time machine.
Right. And then you'll have like hyper time, which is considered to be like a whole other thing that kind of lets you go anywhere. Because it's not necessarily that you're traveling through time, it's more like you're traveling through story continuities at any point in those continuities. So it's like time and world travel. No, it's timeline travel because they're saying that every story. Oh shit, Ryan, I know what you're talking about now. I think I get it. In hyper time, what you're saying is true. I do think every issue of a comic is probably no, because it can't be because you if it's in continuity, it's just one fucking line. Like if it's out of continuity,
But you can have millions of lines.
but you don't need lines for the individual things because then it's not a line,
You don't
right? If it's
need.
a point on a line, that's different. But if it continues going forward or backward and just
But
includes
every
other
point has its
events,
own independent line.
that doesn't make sense though. I disagree with that. Like it's
Why not?
because they're not points then. Like they're not points if they're lines. It's one of the two. You're like a point would be like an event, and a timeline
Right.
is like a series of events.
Right.
So it can't be a point and a line. You're either a point on a line, like an event in a series,
But can't you be a
or
point and a line?
no, because you're
You can be
either
both a particle and a wave.
like you're either an event or you're a series of events, but you can't be both things at
What
the
if you're
same
an
time.
event in a series?
Then you're on a line. You're a point on a line,
Right.
but you're not the
Right.
line, you know?
I'm not saying it is the line.
But you are trying to say that it's both
I'm saying
point
every
and a
one of those
line.
points has a separate line from every other point with its separate line. And all of those points are the issues or individual installments of these supposedly linear stories.
I don't understand when you say
I'm saying they're all like
point is a
staggered
line.
along these lines,
Like
these timelines or whatever, these universe lines.
multiple lines can have the same point, but that doesn't mean that the point is a line.
I'm not trying to say the point is. I'm saying every issue should have its own independent universe from every single other issue. All of them.
Doesn't
There should be like
excuse me.
millions of these suckers.
That doesn't make sense though, because they're
Why not?
persistent. They have past and they have futures.
Yes, but past are just storied events. Each of these issues can just say that their past was the same things you saw in previous issues.
But that means that they're on that line with those
It
previous
doesn't mean
issues.
they're on a similar line.
Unless they say that the past is different, it's the same. Like this is the thing. When you watch episode 4 of Smallville, they're not like episodes 3, 2, and 1 may have happened. They were similar, I guess. Like
No,
just it
I'm saying they
the
did
next point.
happen from the point of view of episode 4, but episode 4 hasn't happened from the point of view of episode 1.
But they're all persistent worlds. One would be still going, and you would imagine one is going into two and going into three and going
Okay,
into
okay.
four. Like
But
that's the
like
thing.
literature and books and all that is always in the present tense because you can pick it up and read it whenever you want.
but
right?
it's still within context of the other stories in the series. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows happens after the Chamber of Secrets, you know?
Okay, okay. So kind of like we're talking about like these like various other media, and they have stories after they supposedly ended, right? Or after the
Then they
points.
didn't end, you know? Like,
Yeah, right. They none of them ever ended. This
agree.
right, okay. So after the point at which we stopped being able to see those stories, right? Every Harry Potter book, if it was in the same thing, would be like episode 1 has a universe, and we can only see up to the end of the first book, and that's the point at which we can no longer see that story, right? Book 2 has, you can see the entire story up until like the end of the second one. So there's like 7 universes,
But
and
that's
each of
not
them
what
you can only see
DC
more
is
and more of the
saying.
story.
Like, are you just saying that's what you
And it keeps going on
want?
past that you can't see.
But are you just saying that that's what you would want? Because that's not how it is. Like, a matter of fact, I can tell you, like, the most recent Adam West thing that we've seen. Because it was in, like, Crisis on Infinite Earths for the CW. They show the actor who played Robin, but as, like, a fat adult or whatever. And he's witnessing, like, the crisis wave, like, hitting his world. So we know that there is, like, a modern day, like, Adam West thing. Which, oh fuck, we can actually figure out the relative position of that Batman Beyond event a little bit compared to the Crisis on Infinite Earths in the sea.
There is no such thing as a modern day, is what I'm getting at.
It's all relative, which we
Right.
already know.
There's no relative modern day.
What do you mean there's no relative modern day?
Like, a modern day is a point of view.
Which is relative. Points of view are
Right,
relative.
right.
So how is it not relative?
Uh, I mean, like, there's no present in any of these stories because there's always a next issue or a next event.
That doesn't mean there's no present, it's relative. It's relative to the characters in the moment. Like they have their own present. You know, like it's weird to say that like there is no time. We have stuff like in Young Justice where they're like February like 22nd at like da na 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 time, and it's like well we you know like the exact time and like the date of like when the thing happened
Right,
in universe. They
right,
have they like they're stamping it and saying
right.
the scene you're
They
right
are like
now
the
takes
only
place here.
people who actually go about consistently having a decent chronology of every almost event is relatively time stamped, like on the hour,
But you can see how
whenever they
like
change locations.
all these DC universes have their own like time differences between each other. Like the Watchmen story ends and Doomsday Clock happens almost immediately after. Meaning like Watchmen is like relative to us kind of like in the past, like in like the Nixon era or whatever. And then we have like Earth Zero, which is like in 2020, but they interact with each other, you know? Like the timelines don't add up to be the same. Watchmen's not in 2020 during like when they interact with us. Like, does that make sense? Not us, Earth Zero, because I knew you were about to say some shit on that. What are your thoughts on that? Like, that's just kind of how it is.
Mm,
Speaking of Earth Zero, did you know that the editors originally intended for Earth One to be the world that Jay Garrick is from? Because that's what happened first. But there was like a miscommunication error where the Jay Garrick Earth became Earth 2, and then they just never fixed it. And that's why we call them Earth 2, even though all their comics came out first. And
Why are they Earth 2?
because of a fuck up.
Like, yeah, then. That's why they're Earth 2 then. Why are they Earth 2 now?
So Earth 2 doesn't make any sense anymore because Crisis on Infinite Earths never happened. So
Right.
we should have old Earth 2, and we should have like the new 52 Earth 2, and I've never talked to you about this before. An antimatter universe Earth that calls our world Earth 2, and they're actually like Earth 3, but they're not Earth 3. Like they have Owlman and Ultraman and like the Crime Syndicate, like the evil Justice League of Earth 3, but they're not Earth 3. They're like an antimatter world that's essentially the exact same thing as Earth 3. Kind of.
So the Earth numbers are just like from the point of view those are the numbers from the point of view of say like Earth 0 or Earth 1.
Well,
But then like
no.
the other like the Owlman, they could be like, well, we're Earth 1 and you're Earth 3.
Well, we've seen the map though, Ryan. The map is like a canon thing.
What point of view is the map from?
Everyone's.
Why does the Earth 1 designated in the map get to be number 1?
I
Earth 2 would like to have a word with whoever made that map. Is one of them like, the same thing with all the other Earths. They're all like co-equal, right?
They probably shouldn't be. Cause remember how we talked about the fuck? I think it's called the metaverse, like the Doctor Manhattan
Megaverse.
thing, not the megaverse, the
Oh,
metaverse. So Doctor Manhattan was afraid that he would have to kill Superman, and he was like, Superman is tied to the metaverse. So when you like directly change stuff about Superman, it manipulates like all of reality. So he's like, if I was to destroy like Earth Zero Superman, that could have like huge ramifications on like all of existence essentially. Because that Superman is so fucking important,
is he that important though?
because it's not like that for other Supermen. Other Supermen die all the fucking time. You know what I mean? Like this
Why is
one.
this Superman more important? Like if all of the Supermans are canon Jim Lee style, and they're all the one that matter the most to the reader, why does Earth Zero Superman matter?
Because he's tied to the metaverse, and he's the only one who's shown that like super important tie where he has to.
Then it sounds like Jim Lee was incorrect because Earth Zero is more important than all the other ones, more canon, if you will, because it's tied to the metaverse.
Well, it's not tied to shit. Superman
Okay.
specifically
So
connected to
is Superman the only one tied to the metaverse?
that we know of, but you have to keep in mind that this Superman is the fusion of Earth 52 Superman and pre Flashpoint Superman living on the rebirth Earth.
And that's where Earth Zero is?
So,
Like, because you're talking like this Earth Zero. I'm like, where is this Earth? Because you have like this like 52, this rebirth, this pre 52. Those are all like Earth Zeros that we thought they were
see,
at the
that
time.
is a legitimate point, I will say, because if the new 52
How do you know you
is
haven't
Earth Zero,
mistaken the metaverse connected Superman with another very similar looking Superman?
because the events of Doomsday Clock take place within Rebirth, so we know
So the
that it's Rebirth.
rebirth Earth Zero Superman is the most important Superman that ever was because he's tied to the metaverse.
We don't know. Because they could
Like if
introduce
Dr.
Superman later,
Manhattan
right?
went around like testing out and like killing and then unkilling other Supermans, from other universes, would it have the same effect? Like, why? In what way? Like, this metaverse concept sounds kind of fuckety.
All of
Um,
it's fucky, dude.
right. But I'm like, why is this Superman so important again?
Because he's tied to the metaverse.
And
And
what is the
manipulated.
metaverse?
It's some shit Dr. Manhattan was talking about. But maybe he's wrong. You know, he's wrong about 5G.
Yeah, like Dr. Manhattan sounds like he's full of shit. He can't see shit. He's like the Jedi in Star Wars. That the dark side has clouded many things. The future's hard to see, Anakin. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Now, I will say, if pre Flashpoint Superman and New 52 Superman fused and they fused their histories, which is what happened in like Superman Reborn, what does that mean for like the New 52 Earth and the pre Flashpoint Earth? Shouldn't they now be one Earth? Or do they still have the unfused Superman? Or do
It
they have
depends on what a
fused
fused
Superman?
history mean. Like, does that mean like all of the books in the past, publication shit, are all fused? Does that mean the history is fused, but only from like my memories point of view, like some Savage Dragon thing, or some like actual like the whole universes are fused?
Superman
Like,
Reborn tried to
it
say
sounds like
that
it's
like
unclear what fusing histories means,
it is unclear because
especially when your history is vague and you keep changing what the history was. Like these, 52 to Flashpoint and like pre 52 are like separate Earth zeros or something.
that's I mean that's a legitimate point.
Like, where's the history? Which histories of the Supermans? There's many a Supermans.
Indeed.
Fusing their history doesn't necessarily mean anything if they can just be weird, different people.
Um One thing that I'm kind of upset about, Ryan,
Yeah,
is the multiverses end thing I brought up like a little while ago. Cause
whatever that means.
cause that book
There'll always be a
happens
megaverse
that
and a metaverse, whatever the fuck
here.
that means. Some dumb shit.
Like
Not even like a place.
because I
It's like
originally
some
thought
bullshit
it's like a
meta
force almost that
commentary
he's
that doesn't
connected
make
to.
sense.
Agreed. I get that you're still stuck on metaverse, but Dark Knight's death metal multiverses end takes place on our Earth. At first, I
Yeah.
heard that all the Earths were fusing together. Um, I, I guess I
What does that
I didn't know it was
mean?
supposed to be us, cause that's dumb. It's dumber than it was before. I thought Perpetua would have destroyed
How
us and then condensed the
dumb,
Earth.
dumb, dumb.
That's what I thought was gonna happen.
Because
But
every time that happens, it should be all of the Earths fused except for Earth 33.
right, like they should
They
leave
have an
us.
asterisk and they never count. Ever. Like they should, but they don't. The multiverse gets destroyed except Earth 33. Doesn't count. It should, but it doesn't. Is what they should end up writing in every book. If they want to be consistent with that being the real world, in air quotes, then the real world doesn't get destroyed unless it does. And until it does, then your story's bullshit in including it as
Right.
Earth 33.
What sucks, Ryan, is that
So don't ever destroy Earth 33. Otherwise, you've brought continuity tumbling down.
right. Not only is this like weird because it involves us, but even if they undo it, right? Like through time travel or whatever, they've established pretty much that undoing stuff with time travel doesn't fucking matter. Because they've undone plenty of stuff with time travel and it's just like its own Earth, you know?
Yeah, it's every time you do that, you just like many Earths interpretation just split off more worlds. You didn't actually like undo it.
So I don't know how to feel about it because I'm sure it's going to get undone. But
But can it be undone if things don't actually get undone? When you undo things, you just make more Earths, one where it got undone
and
and one
one
where
where
it
like it
didn't.
didn't. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on how they do it. Because it seems like they only make a new Earth whenever it's like a continuity shift kind of thing. So,
So does that mean we can count the continuity shifts plus 52 or 53 or 54 or something, and then that's the number of
oh
universes
no,
in the
Ryan,
thing?
don't do that. Don't do that.
What?
So,
Why not?
because they kind of have done something like that, but not really. Like the Crisis Earth is like Earth 1985 or whatever. So they went by like the year that the crisis happened, but then the New 52 Earth is called like the New 52 or whatever. Called it like Earth 52. And then that doesn't
So
make
there's like
sense because
Earth
there's
3,
already like a
Earth
Earth 52.
1985, Earth 4, like that.
Like they're kind of picking the names to show you like what crisis events they're kind of referring to. They're not picking the names in a way that would be just better, I would say. They should just give them arbitrary numbers or something. I don't like this.
Isn't that the whole point of the 52 numbers? They're arbitrary numbers.
Well, yeah, I agree. But I'm saying when they
Or
call it Earth
53.
1985, then it's no longer arbitrary, you know?
What do you mean? Yeah, okay. Like, so you can have names or you can have numbers. Can you really have both?
Like in this case, it's like an Earth that has like a number and a name, but they're just the same thing.
Well, then only have one on any kind of like style guide. Like, if you have a multiversity map, stick to the numbers. And you can have like an AKA when you have like your, you know, Young Justice timestamp location setting, Earth 3, aka the Nazi one or whatever. But like, you know, just have both, man. And like have a consistent like numbering system.
Right now, we're on like Earth 33, aka Earth Prime, aka like the only Earth in the multiverse right now.
No, no, no. AKA Earth Prime, AKA real shit.
Also,
That's the name.
I
That's
don't
the
like
third.
Earth
What?
Prime and Prime Earth being two different things. Like Earth Zero is also called Prime Earth.
Stop calling things Prime.
I know, it's dumb. But then
Prime
Earth
just means you have a little
33 is
like
also Earth
tick
Prime.
mark on top. Prime number.
So, ah,
Okay, on Earth Prime, are prime numbers really prime numbers or are they just numbers?
we're on Earth Prime.
Or are they prime numbers?
Earth Prime prime numbers. So, I right now I'm stuck thinking about a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Like Wally
What happens when you think about continuity?
Fair. Wally West is from pre-Flashpoint Earth. So that implies that
This
pre-Flashpoint
is reminding me of
Earth
like the
doesn't
It's
have a
Always
Wally
Sunny
West.
like conspiracy board web thing. This is pretty much that.
Yeah, because it's like pre-Flashpoint Earth shouldn't have a Superman. It shouldn't have a Wally West because they're both gone. They both left, and it shouldn't have a Lois Lane. Um,
So are you talking about like all those characters that are like holdovers from previous like crises?
yeah,
Those
who like
crises
then like
worlds
move
should be
over into
missing.
current
Yeah,
continuity. Yeah,
yeah.
because they're
Okay.
saying like they're the exact same people. They shouldn't have Wally West kids there either, because they also got moved over from that continuity to our continuity. Um, it's just a thing where if they try to tell a story about that Earth, if Superman shows up, or the
It's like,
Flash,
but I thought he got
or his
fused to
kids,
the other one.
right? it's a thing where you like lose your shit. You're like, then what happened? Like, what really is it then? You know?
Yeah.
Um,
It's just a facsimile.
it's not quite the
Deception.
right one.
It's not even real.
Ryan, not the other day, this was probably like a few months ago, was like, stop trying to make Angel Supergirl a thing. 'Cause I was trying to tell him about the Supergirl from the 90s that's like an angel. But she's like, if I want her to be, she's the main. She's canon, that happened.
I don't
That's
say it's canon. It was never not canon.
never not canon.
Like the things for saying it's canon. The comic book, like comic books, like that whole like just comic book like as a medium. Like I don't even mean like non-canon. I just mean like comic books. That all is like kind of like a canon. And so the Jim Lee thing is like we're expanding that canonicity to the other mediums of like movie and TV show, including like cartoons and stuff, right?
I'm gonna
Right?
stop you on that, Ryan. That's not accurate. Cause before they would tell stories and say this story like takes place on like another Earth. Don't think about it too hard, kind of thing. But those stories matter, and he's saying they matter just as much as like everything else matters. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
they used to tell side stories and be like, this like you saw Pirate Batman and you thought he was cool. Well, that's not gonna affect main continuity. But because they do all this multiverse shit,
No, no, no.
well,
Instead of
technically,
main continuity,
yeah,
you should say they don't affect Earth
Earth
Zero.
Zero. Really, they don't affect Earth question mark because the Earth name is gonna change every time we do a fucking crisis thing,
Right.
right? I mean, I guess it
There is
does
no Earth Zero.
because it'll always be Earth Zero to us until
Does
it's
that mean they recalibrate like the numbers every crisis?
no, not really. Because like in the new
Should they
52, should they change it every crisis? Nah,
like have like a new updated multiversity map?
nah. For one,
Nah.
please get rid of this fucking like 52 Earths thing. I really want them to acknowledge the infinite multiverse in the comics because they keep not doing it. Like Convergence set them up to be like it's infinite again, and they don't really talk about it. They stick to these 52 worlds as if I care. But like when am I going to see them start referring to the worlds that we do actually all geek out about? Like the Harley Quinn animated series is like its own universe. Young Justice, the show, is like its own universe. Adventures of Superboy is its own universe. And those are all things that they can play with, and it's not like a weird like rights thing. Like, they can try to play with Marvel, but playing with Marvel, you need permission. They have all these totally fair game worlds they can play with, and they just don't, you know?
Okay. So like we're talking about like before how like you have these like doubling up on like these comic book story and then like you have like the movie adaptation, but it's not like in continuity with the book. So like all of those like Young Justice comics that are in continuity with the show,
That's one
that's
universe.
not a doubling up?
That's not a doubling up.
Right. Okay.
If it's excuse me, like a tie-in material thing, then it's one universe. So like the Young Justice video game, the Young Justice tie-in comics, that one fucking like radio show recording thing they did for Fandom, like all that's like one universe.
So what about like because some things you'll have like modeled off of those things, but it and then I guess it's not in continuity.
Well, if you know
Like
it's
some of the
not in
video games.
continuity, then then it's another Earth. If you're not sure, then we just don't know. Like for Teen Titans Go, when they crossed over with Young Justice, who the fuck was that like Calderon? Is that like a different Young Justice Earth, or is that supposed to be
Wait,
the Young
when they
Justice Earth?
in the movie, um, like they have like the DC MAU guys show up.
Hmm.
Remember that? So
It's been
like,
a minute, but I remember somewhat what you're talking about. The Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go like big multiverse scene.
yeah,
Which that movie is super relevant because of the fact that like that's a legitimate multiversal event.
yeah.
When they show the Filmation Teen Titans show up or whatever, that's like their current iteration, I guess. It's kind of weird to
So
think about.
did that maybe I asked this before? Did that movie come out before the
Jim Lee announcement.
no, but not before the CW show crossover event?
Oh, like who did it
Because I think that came out in like
first?
2018 or something, like the Teen Titans Go movie.
Okay, I'll look at
And if
it.
that counts as like this like multiversity, like in the same way that the CW thing counts before the Jim Lee told everyone that they counted, actually,
2019.
yeah.
So then Crisis on Infinite Earths for the CW. I'll look that up next.
Maybe I already asked this and we already looked it up. Probably.
So 2019. So now I need to be more specific. The first episode of the CW one happened December 8th, 2019. But the Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go thing happened on July
Okay.
21st, 2019.
Is there
So they did
an
it before
older
then.
example of of this kind of like
They all exist in the
extended
same
canon
multiverse thing.
crossover thing? Can we find the earliest example of this?
Um, I don't know. Because what counts as an example? Like, how many universes have to be involved for us to say, this is the one?
Well, yeah, like wouldn't it just be like of some kind of like comic book tying into like a live action TV show or movie or something?
Well,
Like you just need at least that kind of like media continuity connection thing to
oh, I
count
see what
as
you're
like
saying. You need it to be
where's the
something that
first like
transitions.
comic book to live action TV show crossover? Like we the first one we can think of is, even though it doesn't have any live actions, but it the is
A
the Teen
Teen
Titans Go,
Titans one. Yeah.
because it has a bunch of stuff. Like, is there an earlier similar to that or the CW one that occurred that we can, in retrospect, like grandfather into? It was actually canon the whole time. Like
So, Ryan, if you look up Batman of the Multiverse, it's a Batman the Brave and the Bold episode that has Batman Beyond, but it also has the Batman from Batman the Animated Series. But
yeah,
it also has the Batman. Like it has
yeah.
like the cross show Batman.
And all those Batmans are actually the Batmans in their shows,
Right.
not just like a Batman that looks like the Batman from their shows.
Right.
Like it's actually the guy.
Because it's all one multiverse kind of thing.
So is the Batman the Brave and the Bold, that episode, the first example
Well,
that we know of right now?
right, because we can just keep kind of doing this kind
I
of
mean,
thing
maybe.
potentially.
Uh,
Also, you remember when in the Justice League, I think it's a Justice League Unlimited episode, where they meet this superhero team that's like the JSA, but it isn't the JSA?
there is an episode of Justice League where they go to some place that's actually a big like genjutsu of this like post-apocalypse mutant boy that's like and he's like using the comics that John Stewart like read, like those same comics to create a world that kind of is like the JSA.
Does that world like stop existing once he's done doing the thing?
Like it was never actually like a real world, it was just like an illusion.
So it was just an illusion.
Like projecting it into people's heads. And it wasn't actually the JSA. It was a similar
They're
sort
like
of like
Captain I can't remember what it's called.
there was a tornado guy. There was like Green Guardsmen. Was
Instead of like
essentially
Green Lantern.
yeah, essentially instead of the um what was the old
Oh,
Green Lantern?
they're like Captain Ursats. That's what I was trying to say.
Something similar to that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Do they run to the JSA like the actual? They have JSA people on the team, like in Unlimited, like just normally, like they're just here, you know,
Hmm.
like Power Girl and like Star Girl and who else is on the team?
I mean, I'm not about the name of
JSA,
Justice League people.
like JSA people are just around, I guess, in that, you know.
Has the Batman crossed over with anybody else before other than Batman the Brave and the Bold? Like the Batman is in like the show The Batman.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
Yeah.
The
I was
Batman
surprised to see
TV
him there.
show, Batman, or just the TV show. Is that one people would want to cross over? Because like we're talking like in terms of like like popularity, I guess, like a legacy popularity, like cult classic, in the way that like everyone likes the animated series or Batman Beyond. So of course they're going to be in this Batman the Brave and the Bold. It's actually surprising that the Batman would be like it's not though because it's a good show and all that. It's like I
It was
guess the
also the
Brave and the
most
Bold
recent
writer.
show at the time.
What?
Like relative to Batman the Brave and the Bold, the
It was just
Batman
the
was just
last
the one
show.
that
Yeah.
came before. So I don't think
Um,
it's that surprising.
do you think that's the reason though? Like, what's the reason that they have the Batman in the Batman the Brave and the Bold episode with all the Batmans?
I mean, it's probably just because they're trying to do all the Batmans. Because there's just a lot of people who show up in that. Like,
Okay.
I only named like a few of them.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Crossovers earlier. I don't know because I haven't watched much of the Batman TV show, but it doesn't strike me as the kind of show that would be having a bunch of these kind of like because it seems like um before before the CW crossover event that the two other examples we have are kind of like
In
more
2019, like they're like recent.
no I mean like the Teen Titans Go and Batman the Brave and the Bold are both more like comedic shows. Like breaking the fourth wall is a thing that they're both like fine with doing, right?
Mhm. Right. Like they can
So
be
like
taken like not seriously, is what you're saying.
to what extent like so it's like so I guess because like so before the CW or whatever, the only other like multiverse crossover things were in these sort of not serious shows, right?
Mhm.
Is that does that have any effect on? Because I guess it wouldn't.
Because the Batman the Brave and the Bold one happened in 2011.
Yeah.
That might be the earliest one we found so far. April 29th to be precise in case that comes up.
Because a lot of shows, like something like the animated series, they don't acknowledge things beyond their show the way that like Batman the Brave and the Bold did, and Teen Titans Go did, and CW show did. Like, is that just like a trend that started maybe not with Batman, but like around that time that like there just wouldn't be earlier examples?
I mean, we don't know if there are early examples until we like find
Fine,
them,
right.
you know?
But like I'm like, what if that's like that idea of having these kind of crossovers was like a more novel idea around the Brave and the Bold time. And so, like it sets the precedent. Like if it was the first, it could have actually just been the first, and then the other ones are following in that precedent. But if it's the first, then there wouldn't, like if it's the precedent, then there wouldn't be any earlier. Like whichever first one we think we have, if we find an earlier one, like like at some point there just won't be an earlier one because one of those has to be the first one to actually do it.
True. But we just don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes. Like we don't know
Right.
when or if we'll ever hit the first one.
I was
Especially since there's so
watching
many comics and stuff.
I don't remember the name. It's hard to pronounce. It's not hard. I just haven't memorized or remember the name of this town, city, village, community archaeological site that they found in Turkey, and it's potentially the oldest human like settlement because it goes back like 7,000 years. Like it's like Neolithic. Like this is like maybe because they haven't found an earlier one. So like in the similar way, like it's until they find an earlier one, this has like the record for like earliest like place that's like a town kind of thing.
Right.
Like it's like Neolithic revolution with like farmers.
Oh, yo, you know what I just realized, Ryan?
What?
Multiverse lore across like the different medias is relevant because they're like all in the same multiverse. Like if like
I mean,
it's all,
didn't you already say this though?
well,
How is it
hold on,
like
because I'm not talking about like crisis events where it's like every universe is at risk. I'm saying if in the Batman the Brave and the Bold episode where the multiverse is brought up, if they say something like
feel
the
I feel like I
multiverse.
already like thought that that was implicit in what you were saying about like the threatening thing because it was just like whenever the multiverse is mentioned, that should potentially be relevant to all of the other worlds,
But
right?
I mean that's true, but I'm saying it might be more confusing to think about
Because
like
they'll
where the
all
multiverse came
say
from.
different things about the multiverse, and
Exactly,
only one of them can be correct.
because they're all in the same multiverse.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the same multiverse they're referring to. But how do
Yeah.
you figure out which one is correct if you have these different, like, or potentially different descriptions of the same thing?
Jim Lee
Like,
would say, which is your favorite?
typically evaluating their claims, right?
I suppose like you could just look at another thing and see if it like disqualifies what they say, right?
Because they can be contradictory, but we'll have no way of like knowing which one is more accurate, right?
Unless someone says something that's just wrong. Like
How would we know it's just wrong?
if someone said there were only like 10 universes or something, then we could be like, well, let's count how many
Like,
DC
I
properties
mean,
there
like
are,
not
right?
necessarily quantitative, like some qualitative claim.
If they make
Like
a
depending on like
non-provable
if we make
claim,
an
then we can't prove it.
unfalsifiable claim
Well,
about the
yeah,
multiverse,
if you
then we
can't
wouldn't be able
prove the claim, then we just wouldn't that just make it true then? Whatever.
no, 'cause, like if you had contradicting unfalsifiable claims about the multiverse.
Like what? Like what would be like an example of that?
I have an example. it's a possibility. Like I don't know how much the multiverse is brought up in these examples and shows.
Also, I do have to go for now, because it's like 12:20. Um, but Ryan, is there anything that you would like to say real quick before we wrap up?
Batman's dick is really big in a lot of those universes confirmed.
I doubt that. Uh, thank you all
All
for watching.
of them, it's small.
I think Batman's small multiversally. Thank you all for watching. If you guys like this video, make sure to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ding ding ding
Infinite
to
variation of the multiverse, and his dick is small in all of them.
to be notified whenever we do these videos. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, here with
Batman's large dick.
logging out. Peace. Chickadee guy.